I'm also joined by Major Mohammed Ali Shah, defense expert on the broadcast. Major Shah, thank you for joining us on the broadcast this morning. So these incursions have been going on for many months now, ever since that incursion which took place, that bloody incursion which took place in Galwan, which kind of reset the paradigm at the line of actual control. The last one we saw at Bara Hoti. Now, what do you sense? Do you think the LAC has now changed forever? We can't go back to that original position which we had before the Galwan clashes?
To answer your question, I will just take you back briefly in history slightly. On 4th July 1914, there was a high-profile meeting which was held in Shimla. That's where the Shimla Pact was signed. That time, the Britishers, the Chinese, they had come together, and Indians, of course, they were there. And that time, the line was demarcated between India and China, India and Tibet, basically, you can call it. And that was of 3,488 kilometers stretch. And at that time, the McMahon line was also decided. Now, with a thick leaded pencil on a small scale map, a line was drawn. Now, but obvious, if you go on ground, that small line, that thin line on paper which was drawn would be over 100 kilometers in width, right? So now that is why the line of actual control is a perception. There is no clear line demarcated between India and China, unlike India and Pakistan, where there's a clear line demarcated. That's why it's a line of control. Now, because of that perception, often we have the Indian troops and the Chinese troops patrolling in their respective borders, which they perceive to be their own area, and they come face to face, and hence the standoffs take place. Like, for example, what happened on 14th and 15th June 2020 last year at Galwan Valley, where Colonel Babu was martyred along with 20 other brave hearts of ours who received a Mahavir Chakra posthumous. Now, to ensure that such clashes do not happen, because it's a very common phenomenon. Now, what happened in Tawang, again, last week in Bamla and Yangtze. So, to ensure that such clashes don't happen, it has to be documented. Ultimately, we ended up detaining 200 of Chinese PLA soldiers, yes, but due to interference of local commanders over there on ground, they were released and there was no harm done to either side ultimately. But in order to avoid this, we can have n number of co-commander level meetings or high level meetings of soldiers. Ultimately, we have to understand a co-commander is who? He's a general, he is a soldier. He's not a diplomatic or a politician. The soldiers are trained to fight. They are not trained to indulge into diplomacy. That is one thing we must really understand here. Now, unless and until it's documented and put on paper and files, and that dispute is solved, I see this as a permanent feature. Until then, there is no solution to it. It will keep happening because it's like, I'll give you a small example. Robert Frost wrote this poem, "Good fences make good neighbors." In case you and I, we are neighbors and there's a boundary, there's a gate where we only talk orally through principle that is your land, this is my land. But there's no documentation done. There's no contract being signed. There's no stamp paper duty signed. So now there will be misunderstandings. It will go on leading. A few days back, just about 4 days back, China celebrated their national day. They also sung the national anthem. And they even said that they will not give an inch of the land to anyone. If you have to be fair enough, China will perceive that to be their land, but certainly not. It is actually our land. That's our perception. But if you do not talk about perception, if you talk about reality on ground, yes, that land actually belongs to India, which China will not agree because China is very clever. They believe in winning wars without fighting. Sun Tzu, it's a Chinese author, just like we have Chanakya Riti in India. Sun Tzu wrote this book, The Art of War. In that, in chapter 2, paragraph 2, line 4, it's clearly mentioned the acme of a military general is to win wars without fighting. So that is what China is actually doing. Biological warfare, you see the entire world, coronavirus. You see psychological warfare. On 19 June last year, 2020, China hacked Australia's servers. And so their president, Mr. Morrison, was very magnanimous, not to name the nation. So they have psychological warfare, cyber warfare, psychological warfare, and now they are now entering into our land to invade our territory, which they perceive to be their territory mistakenly. But our Indian army is very well prepared, very well equipped to actually face any challenge. We are not only prepared, in the Indo-Tibet border, the Chinese are at a disadvantage. I will tell you, let me explain to you how. Because they are on such an altitude that when the Chinese Air Force aircraft take off, they take off with only half payload of fuel. which means that the entire tank cannot carry the fuel. So as a result, the entire sortie is not completed. Now, also Chinese generals have written about the high altitude warfare bravery of Indian army soldiers. So we have a very, very big advantage. And Chinese would never actually want to come into a military confrontation. And if you see logically, even last year in Galwan Valley, when they had come in the open, in tents. So if you see tactfully, militarily, any soldier who is coming with the intention of attacking or invading will not come openly. He will wear bulletproof vest, he will come and he'll be having trenches, fully armed. But when they came in the open, this only went to prove that they had come thinking that they will say a few words to the Indian army and Indian army will back off from there. But no, our soldiers, we will die, but we will not leave our post by a single inch. So that is where Chinese are mistaken. And I certainly strongly feel, see, China has never honored any of our pacts, be it Panchsheel Pact, be it Shimla Pact, be any of the treaties. Even when Dalai Lama had come into India, with 80,000 followers of his and settled in Mehraulganj, that time China had a problem with India. So China will continue having that problem. But luckily, we are part of the Quad as well, where Australia, Japan, America, and India, they have formed together to build up aggression in the South China Sea, particularly because we are neighbors with China and US recognizes that fact. So I don't think China will again dare to make such an attempt, and I hope it is documented and kept for records.
Right. So thank you, Amrita, and Major Mohammed Ali Shah for joining us on the broadcast.